Okay, back with the conclusion of the roundtable discussion, and then we'll have a warble rant.
As I say, I'm very sympathetic to the struggle for acceptance. I recognise that there was persecution in the past of gay people. However, I don't think we can look at it in the same way today. If you've got a situation where John Howard's government gives gay couples the same relationship rights as de facto and married couples, straight couples, I don't think you can draw those parallels. But I think what we should be concentrating on is that we should have a debate about the role of marriage as a social institution. That should be a legitimate thing to debate. As someone who does a lot of work in child protection, I've seen the consequences of the last big change that we've made in marriage, and I know how the social chaos, the decline of marriage has caused in many communities. I think that's a legitimate topic to debate, and we shouldn't just rush off and support marriage equality in some sort of pink smug of self-righteousness.
Well, talking about debating marriage equality, activists mounted a campaign, as we mentioned before. This was to impose a boycott on the Cooper's Beer Company because the company had partnered with the Bible Society in this debate on gay marriage over Cooper's Beer. Now, ultimately, Cooper's Brewery released a message from the managing director and the finance director apologising and endorsing marriage equality.
On behalf of the Cooper's board and senior staff, we are incredibly saddened by the impact our involvement with the Bible Society has had on our valued Cooper's drinkers and our extended family. Cooper's never intended to make light of such an important issue and would never and did not approve the making or release of the Bible Society video debate.
Our company supports marriage equality. Offence has been taken by our recent involvement, for which we are deeply sorry. We've consequently cancelled the release of our Bible Society commemorative cans and will be taking steps to show further support for our community, including joining Marriage Equality Australia.
Well, you can see the full apology at the Cooper's Brewery website. Toby, why apologise?
I think they're just running scared. You know, what a tragedy. Tim Cooper, I know, he's a very decent, moral man. Tim Wilson, who's involved in the debate, is a good mate of mine. Sensible, decent, lovely fella. I don't know Andrew Hastie, but if you look at the debate, it was well-mannered, it was charming, it was informative, it was the kind of debate you'd hope people would have if they have questions. There are some people who don't support same-sex marriage who should hear that debate. There are some people who do, who should. And sadly, it was turned into, it's been positioned as some kind of extremist rant supported by a homophobic ale company, and simply untrue.
Well, but Jeremy, was Cooper's wrong to be in cahoots with the Bible Society or any religious group in the first place?
Well, you can't have it both ways. Either they can support corporate social causes that they support, or they can't. The problem seems to be when people depart from progressive social values and want to support causes that are traditionalist. I think the alarming point about the Cooper's incident and the IBM instance is that the marriage equality activists seem to be waging this sort of cultural war, and it's sort of like Jane brought up the Weather Underground before. Well, it's sort of like a Maoist tactics where they say if we execute one, we'll educate 1,000, and we constantly narrow the cultural space in which people who support traditional and conservative values are allowed to operate in.
Jane, Toby mentioned Tim Wilson, who was the federal Liberal MP, and he was on that debate for the Coopers. Now, he supports same-sex marriage, and he's accused activists of turning from, quote, oppressed to oppressing, and he says, quote, a free society means freedom for everyone, including those of faith. What's wrong with that?
Look, I don't have a problem with what Tim Wilson said. I also don't have a problem with the debate that the Bible Society put on. I watched it. I thought it was quite reasonable and carefully done. I think, unfortunately, there is a long, long history, and it's the same with feminist causes. The people that you always fight when you fight for your rights as a gay person or as a woman is the religious. It's always the religious who you fight. And so there's such a long history of the Bible Society and religious organisations fighting every step of the way to stop LGBTQI people and women getting equal rights, that as soon as their names are mentioned to those groups, there is an electric reaction. And I think that was Cooper's problem. They didn't understand just what a long time minefield they were stepping into. I, however, disagree with the tactics of those people who tried to shut the debate down. I think it was well intentioned. I think perhaps had they gone for a less fraught subject for this first couple and then gone to this and set up the model of what that debate was going to look like, they might have had a different reaction. And I do, however, think that if you're going to go out and support something, you really have to have the courage of your convictions. You can't back down in fear later. That just looks even worse.
To be fair, that goes for all those CEOs who signed that letter. They won't come on this program. I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I believe some of them were flying back from London. And
Sure, that's probably true. Nevertheless,
can I also say, I did not bring up,
either.
I really want to make this clear, I did not bring up the civil rights. I brought up votes for women, and I did not bring up the weather underground. I brought up suffragettes.
Okay, now, nevertheless...
That's really important.
No, fair distinctions, but nevertheless, Jeremy, I mean, this does raise the question, and this is really our final question for all of you, should there be a political and ideological litmus test now for company executives?
Well, I don't think that should be the case. The role of public companies is to maximise shareholder value and appoint people on merit. It's as wrong to discriminate on the basis of religious belief as it is to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation.
Toby, quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be no test.
Jane?
No test at all. Absolutely.
But we're still having this debate, though. I mean, isn't this the logical upshot from what's happened in the last 4 years?
I'm in favour of them speaking out. I'm in favour of them speaking
only
out.
as individuals.
No, I'm actually in favour of them speaking out any way they want to. I am in favour of them if they want to write a letter against it, for it, whatever. But if you speak out in public, as I've discovered, as Jeremy's discovered, I'm sure Tom has and Toby has, you have to be prepared to cop whatever comes your way. That's
okay,
all.
we are running out of time. That was a really lively debate. Jane, Jeremy, and Toby Ralph, thank you so much for being on Sunday Extra this morning.
A great pleasure.
Well, that's all from us this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I have this week. You can find all our stories at the Sunday Extra website or via the ABC radio app. Remember, we have great discussions on China, the Islamic State, the Catherine Hospital, and many other great things to talk about.
Okay. As if by telepathy, the kangaroos come back as soon as I throw some bread out for the swamp wallaby, because that's what was going on there. I think I can probably get you a view. There we go. That's Fruit Loop. Oh yeah, telepathy. It's an interesting field. A lot of people don't believe in it at all. I heard of a phenomenon via a New Scientist magazine article called telephone telepathy. And somebody actually got some funding and they ran a bit of a study in Britain. And what they did is they gave people a box with a series of buttons. And if there were 5 buttons, then 4 of them were labelled with the most common people who rang them up. They're 4 regular callers, and the 5th button was labelled unknown. So you'd have, friends listed by name with parents or whatever. And if you had 5 buttons, you'd expect randomly 20% of the time the person would listen to the telephone bell ringing, and then they would select who they thought was calling them, and they'd hit the button and they'd find out how right they were or how wrong they were. Well, they found that your average person was getting 40 to 45% correct selection by the buttons. They were correctly identifying who was ringing them up without picking the phone up. And it was not a geographically limited thing. So it's not an inverse square law occurring with telephone telepathy. In fact, it's more like a reverse inverse square law in terms of distance, because when somebody whose parents were ringing them from the other side of the world looked at the phone ringing, they could pick that it was a parental phone call coming in with 60 to 70% accuracy. It was more accurate the further away the person was calling from. So other examples were given where that a person might suddenly get an urge to pick up their mobile phone and wonder what a particular person was doing, and have a really strong urge to send them a text. and see how they're going. And then fight down the urge to do that, because who wants to be an intrusive helicopter parent? Put the phone back down, and then 30 seconds later, the damn thing beeps with the incoming text. And apparently what was going on was that from 15 kilometres away, I've many times picked up on the fact that one of my children was composing a text message, getting ready to push the send button. So I've been, why do I want to send my kid a text? That's right, they were figuring out what they wanted to say to me. Thursday morning, at about 9 o'clock in the morning, I got struck by a sudden urge to try and organise somebody to turn up in Amsterdam and sort of surprise my daughter by saying, hello, how you going? Is everything all right? You're Warble's daughter, aren't you? I just thought it'd be a funny thing to do, and I couldn't get it out of my head that it would be a really good idea if I could set somebody up to meet my daughter in Amsterdam. And at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just couldn't resist it, and I've got a co-subscriber in Belgium. And I figure Europe's a pretty small place and the countries are pretty tiny, and there's a tiny sort of a chance that this bloke might be able to jump on a bus and go, 50 kilometres and turn up at the Anne Frank Museum and say good day to her. So I actually asked him in a comment thread, strange and wonderful request time, what do you do on Saturday? Is it possible, or is it completely, the sort of thing that would be difficult to organise? And about an hour and a half later, I get this text from my daughter, who thought she was sending it to me at 9 o'clock in the morning, so she had the time frame in mind. And what she wanted me to do was ring the people who organised her series of tickets on the peregrination and confirm that she was in fact going to be on the train into Amsterdam, and she needed to be picked up by the transfer return service and taken to the hotel. And that was interesting, because 3:30 in the afternoon I got the call. I played with a company. There's a call centre in Bangkok that deals with such inquiries from an Australian travel company about a return transfer service in Amsterdam. And I wasn't confident that she was going to actually do the job. So I rang up the place who sold the kid the tickets and enlisted them. And the kid got snowed with telephone calls, and the return transfer service got snowed with emails and telephone calls from 2 different directions. And then the lady in Bangkok actually rang me back at about 7:30 at night to say, yes, it's okay, we've done it, all that. The man will be there to meet your daughter. So somehow, at something like 10,000 miles distance, my kid wanted me at 9 o'clock in the morning to start organising for somebody to meet her in Amsterdam. And I started, and I tried to organise. And it wasn't until 3:30 in the 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that 3:30, something like that I found out which person I was supposed to organise in Holland to go and meet her. So I'm claiming that as a particularly pleasant anecdotal example of text ESP. And Amsterdam's the furthest point in the peregrination, so I can't envisage her going any further than that for me to test the procedure at a greater distance. But I'm feeling pretty happy with that. I didn't pick up on any strange vibes last night when she sent me the text telling me that, I knew it was about time for her to get to the Anne Frank Museum and have the tour. But she left the ticket at the hotel, so we had a bit of a back and forth on what to do about that. And happily, the Anne Frank Museum has a computer system that had her entered into the system as being expected on that tour at that time. So yeah, she's having fun. She's coming up to speed really well. She's had a few frightening interludes. And we've set a new family record for telepathy. My father had a pretty good go with it. Once he woke up in the morning with the rats, deeply upset because he thought my brother had fallen out of an aeroplane. And about 4 hours later, he got a telegram from Venezuela saying that my brother had been standing on a stepladder changing a light bulb, and he'd got an electric shock and fallen off the ladder, and he was in hospital with kidney failure. So, yeah, we're a little bit weird that way, our family. We can pick up on stuff from a very long way away. Bit like the way a kangaroo, if you cough, they don't care. But if you suddenly move your hand to swat a fly, they'll all jump sideways as you move your hand, because they can pick up on your motor cortex, firing your big muscles and moving your arm. You might be throwing a spear, and if they jump as you throw the spear, they've got a good chance. Anyway, we're on the upload limit again, and I haven't managed to talk about any of the things that really worried me, like global terrorism and shit. Warble's on a lock to YouTube. Ciao.